Det som är fantastiskt med Science Week och den här sändningen, det är att vi som programledare, moderatorer, men också ni som tittar på oss och alla som är med, vi spänner ju bågen brett och vitt, verkligen. Och det är det som är det spännande när vi diskuterar hållbarhet, att det finns så många aspekter som man bör ta hänsyn till. Och nu ska vi har varit och luftat frågeställningar kring Södertälje och hälsa. Nu ska vi faktiskt in i konsten och hur den representeras i staden. Och då är detta faktiskt ett inslag som vi nu ska se om inte vi har länk på med en engelsk person. Förlåt. Jag menar Afaina de Jong är med oss. Men detta blir på engelska. So Afaina, do you hear us loud and clear?
Yes, I hear you very well. Thank you.
Perfect. We hear you and we see you. So take it away.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks for having me. I'm an Amsterdam-based architect, and today I'm going to talk a bit about this special project that I'm doing together with the Grafikens Hus in Södertälje. And I'd like to get into kind of the methodologies, the thinking behind this pavilion that we're building, or that I have been designing over the year and the process. I prepared some slides. Here they are. Check it out. Well, so the pavilion will be based in Södertälje. It's a little bit of a complicated name, but I guess the goal was to create a pavilion that is very different from what we normally build. And in 2019, I got the invitation from Grafikens Hus, which is a museum and a meeting place for contemporary printmaking that is situated in Södertälje. Here you see a little bit of a pavilion that the Grafikens Hus already made in Södertälje. It's a dansbana along the river. And basically the wish was to create a new pavilion close to the new museum building that will open. And it would be a summer pavilion for performances, and also kind of in the winter, a contemplative space where you could listen to music or meet your friends. And I thought, okay, this is an amazing opportunity. I love this, but how do you approach the making of such a public building? And maybe it's good to kind of explain a little bit about how I work. So if I can have the next slide. Yeah, my practice is based in Amsterdam. I started it about 15 years ago. And I think there are two things that are very important to me. My aim is to represent people and cultural movements, communities that are normally not really represented in spatial form or architectural form. And I think secondly, what is very important to my practice is to develop it from a feminist standpoint. And to me, that means that I want to create change on social and spatial issues. And difference is also something that, we really try to design. If we can go to the next slide, I have some examples of my work. So this is like a more autonomous intervention that I made together with Innovisions, who's really also part of the graphic part of this. And it's called City of the Sun. And I think it's like we were looking for basically a form language that can articulate kind of the complex identities and everything that we see in the city nowadays. The cities are so complex, but often the architecture that we see around us is pretty general, or it kind of explains a kind of more national identity, but not like a specific identity. And I think the graphics, as we're developing them, they also are kind of an ornament, to modern times, and kind of be different from the more monotone or homogenic spaces that we move through. The next slide. So this is basically a design that I made for this exhibition in New York at the Storefront for Art and Architecture. And here the question was, you have all these iconic souvenirs like the Empire State Building or the Statue of Liberty. But what if you would think about kind of an iconic spatial model for neighborhoods that aren't that famous? So we got a neighborhood in Brooklyn, kind of a rough neighborhood. But we went there and we basically observed and we found all these spaces that were special to people, like this very famous basketball court, the hall, all the murals and different spaces where people would come together and play music. And I think out of that, we kind of created this idea of a pavilion or space where you could play basketball, where you could have a jazz concert. And I think really what one of the methods that I always use and that we used also here was kind of observing and positioning myself kind of in the everyday life of people. And this means that you take on a different position, not only as kind of an architect who's looking from above, but really try to identify empathetically yourself within that community. Next slide. I also do a lot of exhibition design, which I really like because it often has like a narrative quality. This was an exhibition and it was about kind of appropriating space. So claiming space within an existing space. And of course, this art center was a very beautiful white cube. So what we did was basically create these new spaces and kind of use color and also scale to create a different kind of atmosphere that people and the artists themselves could then again reclaim and make their own. Next slide. So when I first came to Södertälje, I think this was early 2019 already. So that's already 2 years ago. It was a very nice snowy period. And this was basically the location where the pavilion will be. It's north of the city center in the science park between Tom Tits and KTH. And the pavilion will be positioned somewhere between that lamppost and the snow people. Next slide. Yeah. So here I wanted to talk a little bit about, the inspiration and the process behind it. I asked Grafikens Hus to facilitate a couple of workshops over the year. And I specifically asked that they would be with women of all walks of life, ages, backgrounds, because I think as an architect, I was trained in a way that we kind of design for this universal person, which is often like a little bit like this, the Vitruvius man, but it's always kind of a man, kind of unidentified, non-specific. So in this case, I was very interested to meet women and to kind of talk to them about how they use public space, how they relate to the spaces in their city. And we did all graphic workshops, basically around this question of public space, about their identity, about what they want for their city, what they want for themselves, what kind of needs they have in terms of using this public space. And I just thought it was pretty shocking sometimes that, safety is such a big issue. It's very subconsciously, and it's something that I guess it's also hard to kind of, for me, I know because I'm a woman and I have the same thing in public space. You're always trying to navigate. But that was one of the first things that came up. Okay, I need an overview. I need to see who's approaching. But I think after we dealt with the safety question in public space, it also became about, how do I feel in this space? What do I want to do in this space? And I found it very interesting, especially with the younger women, that they were really conscious of the fact that a lot of the spaces that they use, for instance, the basketball courts or the community centers, that they were very conscious that this was designed by often middle-aged men, and in the idea of what these men thought that they would like. So we really tried to kind of deconstruct what kind of spaces they actually like, what it should feel like. And at the same time, we also looked around. We were very inspired, or I was very inspired by the colors, the color palette in Södertälje and in Stockholm. You see a little piece of Södra station there, the John Terrell sky space we visited, but also the Assyrian church. And so we kind of tried to create a color palette and a form palette for a graphic that would be the basis of this pavilion. At the same time, from all the communities, we also took that they were looking for a space where there could be performance, you know, in the summer, where there could be plays, where you could also have multiple functions at the same time. Yeah? So a lot of the questions were like, why is everything separated? Because that means that the boys play basketball and we do this. But why don't we put it all together? Because we also like to play basketball, but at the same time, we also want to be with our friends and listen to music. So we try to create a space in which everything is possible and where you have like a lot of overview and where the people who use it are really captured within this space. Next slide. Yeah, so this is an image of the paper model that we made of the pavilion. I think the black and white is very much, I think, the artist. But the colors are very much taken from the color palettes and the forms that we found in Södertälje and also in the workshops. And I think this pavilion doesn't directly represent kind of the presence of women in the city, but it's basically an example of what can happen when you take well, not a universal standard person as the center of your design, you know? And I think if you do that, you're actually designing for a majority of people in this whole world. So together with Innovisions, I developed this print. Maybe go to the next slide. And here you also see kind of that we use these different see-through kind of circles in which you can sit, and in which the visitor of the pavilion is very much captured as part of it. Next slide. Yeah, so of course, then we all arrived into this pandemic situation. So I basically wanted people to be able to be part of this pavilion before it was built. So last year at Science Week, we did like a 3D, Grafikens Hus did like a 3D scanning workshop. And here you see a lady who's being 3D scanned. And then when we go to the next slide. Yeah. And here, basically, we generated, together with Jens Evaldsson, the pavilion in a game engine. And you see here a lot of people who actually live in Södertälje. Because I think when I designed the pavilion and I put in like the little scale figures, I just thought it was so weird that there were all these little white plastic kind of standard women who were sitting like this or like... and I just wanted the pavilion to be filled with actual bodies, actual people who live there, and also that they could already kind of have a feeling of what it would be. And I think it's something that is this whole workshop. Now there's a database with all of these people and bodies from Södertälje, and I think it's a great opportunity also not only for me but also for other architects to basically have this set, you know, this set of real live people that we can then implement into our designs, because I think it makes us aware who we're actually designing for. I thought it would be good maybe at the end now we have a little video so you can get a little bit of feeling of what the pavilion will look like. If you go to the next slide, there's a video. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. At the moment, we're waiting to actually know exactly when this will be built, but it's in the pipeline, and yeah, we're really excited to see this into reality, and for this pavilion to be part of Södertälje's public life.
Wonderful to
Yeah,
see,
that's,
Afaina. Wonderful to see.
thank you.
It's also amazing to see that you can actually that you can also use the art, not only see it. But I have a question that I was wondering when I listened to you. How can you assure that you include all generations when they experience this process? I mean, the film that you showed was, of course, beautiful. And at first I thought, how can my 90-year-old dad experience this from his point of view if he's in a wheelchair or whatever?
Yeah, I think what is missing in this video is basically the accessibility ramp that we designed. This is kind of an early sketch, but the pavilion has been kind of integrated into this new park at the science park. And of course, we want it to be accessible to everyone. So there will be a very nice entrance for your 90-year-old dad, because yeah, of course, the goal is that it's really for everyone.
And Afaina, I was also thinking not only this example, but in general, to include all people, all cultures, and all ages. It's a challenge, or is it easy?
It's a good question. You know, I always feel like I can do this, but at the same time, you know, I think it's more about the idea that we think that the architecture that we see around us is for everyone, while it's often maybe actually not. So I like to reverse the question, is that if I have the intention to design for everyone, that maybe I should talk to all of these people, that I should actually try to incorporate their viewpoints and their feelings and how they relate to each other, and really try to make an architectural space that has a very different feeling from what has grown over the ages, because the architecture that has grown over the ages has a very specific story, and that story is often about national identity, you know, or local or regional styles. But I think, what does the architecture that represents now, and the people who live now, and the people who have so many complex relations to each other, what does that look like? And I use graphics as a way of, yeah, maybe trying to answer that question and integrating it with space. Yeah.
Yeah, but we are so looking forward to your project here, and Isak and I just want to wish you good luck and hope we'll see you very soon again.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great
Thank you. Bye bye. Tack för detta. Så inspirerande. Vi är strax tillbaka med någonting helt annat.